The Man Everybody Was Afraid of, a Dave Brandstetter mystery. Book 4 in the series. Author Joseph Hansen. Publisher Open Road Integrated Media, New York. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 5. On the screen, long-haired lads in tank tops and faded bell-bottom jeans carried picket signs in front of a white, sun-struck building marked La Caleta City Hall. Dave dropped into a seat. A lot of the lads had muscles, but they minced. There appeared to be chatting and laughter at a guess, high-pitched. Someone parroted a shriek would have gone with that. The camera moved in. They weren't all lads. Thin hair stirred on a bald scalp. A beer belly bulged through a fringed leather vest. "You want the sound, Mr. Bannister?" Cecil stood at his shoulder. "I can imagine it, thanks," Dave said. 5, 6, 7, 8, Cecil grinned. "Gay is just as good as straight," Dave said. "Do they all want to be cops?" Cecil asked. "They all want to be girls," Dave said. "But it's the principle of the thing." The screen filled with a placard lettered in orange marker pen. "Neanderthal, go home." It wobbled. The next frame showed a pair of sturdy youths in sand-color uniforms standing, feet apart, hands behind their backs, at the top of the city hall's tidy front steps. A doorway was a black, rectangular hole behind them. Sun glinted off their short, fair hair, their badges, their sunglasses. They wore heavy guns and nightsticks and no expression. Not even when the picket sign surged toward them, they didn't move. They stood blocking the door. The first of the demonstrators charged up the steps. The camera tilted. The signs waved. It was hard to read them. Gay, law and order, equality, germs. Germs? What was that about? A blur of red and yellow double-knit stripes blocked the camera. Then it was clear again, and watching from another angle at the top of the steps, a gaunt man, beard, mustache, yellow hair, clubbed back, sweaty blue work shirt with the arms torn off, flapped long sheets of paper in front of the stoical cops. They stared straight ahead. Behind them, in the shadowed doorway, a face made a pale, square blur. Ben Orton? The gaunt man lunged. The uniformed boys caught him. He seemed to be kicking. One of the officers raised a nightstick. A sign slammed him between the shoulders. It said something about freedom. Bodies got in the camera's way. There was a splice in the film. The cameraman had switched to telephoto. The gaunt man's face filled the screen. Blood trickled down a forehead where a ropey vein swelled, framed by the tobacco-stained beard. His teeth were rabbity. His eyes bulged. He raved. Dave asked, "Could I just have the sound on this?" Cecil went away. The screen became a streak of color. The film jerked and froze at the frame with the lifted nightstick. The film rolled. All the sound was screaming. Yes, that was Ben Orton in the doorway. What Cliff Curley shouted was, "Legal petition from the voters. Taxpayer citizens of this community. What does he mean, refuse? Who the hell does he think he is?" He struggled in the hands of the officers. Tendon stood out in his scrawny neck. The cameraman focused on the steps where deck shoes, rubber sandals, dirty, bare feet trampled the long pages of ballpoint signatures. Curly screamed, "Big, arrogant, straight! I'll kill the fat!" An electronic tone replaced the words writhing out of the beard. Curly went down out of sight. Signs and shaggy hands shifted, and then there were the target numbers again and the bright white blankness of the screen. Thanks, Dave called. There's more, Cecil answered. Just a second. It was out of chronological order. A week earlier? He'd heard of it, but that was all. Microphones poked at Ben Orton's square jaw. He wore a cap with a badge on it. The gold-braided bill cast a shadow in the harsh sunlight. He jerked slightly with surprise and took off the cap. His hair was close-cropped, and his mustache both gray. The television people had backgrounded him with a hibiscus bush. The red flowers looked as if they were reaching for him. His voice was outdoor high with a whine to it. People wouldn't sign these petitions if they knew what homosexuals are really like. Police officers know that. How these weirdos live their lives. Alleys, public toilets, back rows of dirty theaters, what they do with men they never saw before. Anybody, it's not just that they're mentally sick, they spread germs. You get people like that in your police department locker rooms, you could have your whole police force down with venereal disease. Is that what the people want that are signing these petitions? Well, I can tell you it's not what the police officers want, or their wives. Someone unseen interrupted with a question. The wind took it away before the microphones could catch it. Whether Orton heard it was impossible to tell. He said, "Leave that out if you want to. The whole idea is ridiculous. Any way you look at it, what men you know is going to want to be stuck in a patrol car 8 hours a day with some pervert? And suppose there's trouble, and trouble is what that patrol car is out there to stop. Can you picture some homosexual charging a house where some crazy is shooting guns out the window? I'd hate to see the face of the mother who's signing one of these petitions today when she finds out later a homosexual police officer has been sent to find her lost 6-year-old son." Dave unfolded from his seat, went up the short aisle and the short steps, and looked into the projection booth. Cecil was hunched on a green metal stool in the small work light of one of the projectors, reading a paperback book on electronic journalism. Out in the tinted darkness, the voice of Ben Orton went on. "That mother isn't going to be thanked Sacramento for passing that bill. She isn't going to thank the city attorney for enforcing it. She isn't going to thank the Civil Service Commission that made me put that queer into a job where..." Dave said, "I came for the funeral. The build-up is good, but it's too long." Cecil laughed, tossed the book away, got off the stool, and sped up the reels of the projector. A loose end of film flapped. He knocked a switch and touched the wound-up reel with a long, pale-palmed hand until it quit spinning. He jerked the reel off the machine and dropped it noisily into a can. "One funeral coming up," he said, and pried the lid off another can. Dave went back to his seat, but what came up this time was Daisy Flynn, seated in a light blue armchair between Cliff Curley and a jumpsuit and gray-haired man Dave thought he knew, who wore a hand-loomed tweed jacket and went to an expensive barber. The camera dollied in on Daisy Flynn. She said, "Today we're talking with 2 leaders of the local gay community, Richard T. Noel, who began his work in 1953, and Cliff Curley, founder of Gay Action." Smile. "Gentlemen, I know your reactions to Police Chief Ben Orton's statement that we've just seen differ. How and why?" "Dick, Noel, will you start?" Cecil yelped from the booth. The film streaked past. Dave lit a cigarette in the dark and groped for and found the flip-up metal lid of a little ashtray in the arm of his seat. The screen took color again. The setting was as he'd remembered it. Brown hump hills in the distance, and the foreground half-grown shade trees, plaques in the grass, long lines of uniformed men standing at attention, women in quiet clothes and gloves and hats, seated on metal folding chairs that faced a gunmetal coffin blanketed by a flag, wreaths on easels, white wicker holders for tall sprays of gladiolus, A rank of rifles raised jerking puffs of smoke. A bugler winced into a twist of brass of the long, involved ceremonial folding of the coffin flag, its delivery into the hands of the widow, uniformed son standing woodenly behind her chair, tears leaking from under his dark glasses. Dave thought, Christ, I don't even know what he wants. To be buried? Where? Maybe Amanda knows. No, he never talked death to Amanda. Dave called to Cecil. Can you stop it there? It stopped. A blonde young woman on a chair next to Louise Orton had lifted her hand, turned her head, and raised it slightly. Now, can you roll it very slowly? It jerked ahead, frame by frame. The young woman's hand inched upward. It found Jerry Orton's hand, which rested on his mother's shoulder. The young woman's look searched the young man's face. It was a tender look. Hold it there, please. The film stopped. The screen went dark. Cecil came out of the booth. Dave asked him, That woman, do you know? Was that Anita Orton? Cecil shook his head. No way. It's a big school, Dave said, and very white. That's how I know. Black. You know all the blacks. I don't mean no, but no, you know? And year before last, Anita Orton went with a black boy. Lester, Dave said. Lester Green, Cecil said. He made a mistake. Not a little mistake, a big mistake, and ended up in prison at Soledad. Dave said, She was nobody to fool with. Lester said, I'm not fooling. Neither was her daddy. 5 years for possession. Shit. Lester never blew pot. He wouldn't stay in a room with it. No, that is not Anita Orton. I didn't think it would be. Dave stood up. How crazy was he? Cecil twisted his face. Crazy? Lester? He was so square he couldn't turn over in bed. He never wanted to burn it all down? Cecil faked indignation, popped his eyes, flared his nostrils. Listen to me, man. I am a law student. He made his mouth very round on the word. The law is it. Understand me? Dave said. He didn't know there were two kinds? One for the rich and one for the poor? He does now, Cecil said. Maybe it changed him. Where did he live? Family? La Calita. Mama was all, far as I know. The kind that tied her hair up in a rag and scrubbed white folks' kitchens so Lester could become Thurgood Marshall. I appreciate your help. Anytime. Cecil started for the booth. He out? 5 years can mean 2. Dave pushed the door. With good behavior. Oh, Lester would be good, Cecil said. And you? Dave held the door. Miss Flynn thinks there's a news story in this. Don't get her excited. Cecil stood in the projection booth doorway. The light was behind him, but his teeth showed. If it's a beat, he said, it's my beat. It's not a beat, Dave said. Not yet. He let the door fall shut and went back along the soundproof hallway. She wasn't at her desk. She was on the air. He watched her through double panes of glass from a dim, narrow room walled with busy picture tubes, tended by a man in earphones whose hands moved on switches and slid controls. Out in the studio, the silhouetted floor people, directors and technicians stood among hulking cameras like marionettes strung with fallen wires. Beyond them, at the curved desk, newscasters sat in shafts of light. The men shuffled papers, smiled at the cameras. Daisy Flynn's dye job flared. Her face was suddenly on all the monitors. Her voice came out of loudspeakers above Dave's head. She said, And finally, a Channel 10 news desk exclusive. A new development in the bludgeoning death last week of Police Chief Benjamin J. Orton of La Calita Medallion of Los Angeles. The company that insured Chief Orton's life is busy today interviewing persons connected with the case. Death claims investigator David Brandstetter declined to be taped or photographed and told this reporter his inquiries were simply routine. But he did express doubt that Clifford Thomas Curley, the gay activist leader, now in jail awaiting trial for Chief Orton's murder, is guilty of that killing. She paused, then smiled. And now, good afternoon from all of us here at Channel 10's news desk. The screens showed a blue plastic bottle of detergent, lighted and filmed with reverence. He pushed out of the control room. He yanked open the twin doors to the studio. She came out of the harsh lights into the shadows. She was laughing between the two men when she saw Dave. She stopped. Stopped laughing, stopped walking. The two men glanced at her, at him, and went on past. Dave told her, I said I wasn't a story. I've been in this business a long time, she said. Don't you think I know a story when I see it? Quick enough to kill it, Dave said. The people have a right to know, she said. People who murder other people give up a lot of rights, Dave said. Someone out there was breathing easy, walking around smiling, sure that Curly would get it for what he did. Now, what's he doing? You'll get him, she said. Or her. I checked you out with the L.A. police. You're the best in your game. Except, it's not a game, Dave said. Can you find me a photo of Ben Orton? If I do, will you forgive me? She said it archly and dropped some of her script. The pages whispered across dusty black vinyl tile. He let them lie there. You just do it again, he said. I'll do it again, she stooped for the papers. In any case, she rose. Come with me. The California Adult Authority had offices in a flat-roofed building that smelled new inside. George Anderson was the name cut into a wedge of polished wood on the desk in the office he was sent to. Anderson said, Lester Green got out on the 16th and reported to me. Phoned in a week later. He's living with his mother in La Calida. A wide window gave a view of the parking lot. That's nice, Dave said. Did you see how he got there? A blonde girl brought him, Anderson said. A little bit fat in a brand new bright green gremlin. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.